Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Focused at
Focus at
40.
40.
I am Kathy Goodall. I am a leadership and growth coach. I am a builder of people, brands, and businesses. And I'm excited to be back for another episode of Focused at 40.
I love a builder of people. So I am Genesis Etienne. I am a marriage and family therapist, a licensed mental health counselor. I am a podcaster, and I am a helper of people. How's that? I love that. Loving
Yes.
that. Welcome back, you guys, for this season, for this episode. We're so excited. Today we're talking about something that is somewhat loaded. Um, and it's something that I think everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are going through and a lot of people experience, and that is getting married and blending families. Um, Divorce has a way of changing families. And then getting married again has a way of changing families. But I think that the bigger piece there is what happens when two people come together who have had lives prior to being, together at that moment. So, Kat, tell me a little bit. I can tell you so much about blending families on my end, but you were recently married. And so I'm curious as to what has it been like for you to kind of get married now and the experience of being married at 40 and having a husband who has had children and who, I mean, these children are a part of your life.
Yeah. Well, getting married at 40 was definitely a game changer for me because it's not something that's, I mean, you've been alone and independent for 40 years. It's kind of hard to just drop everything that you're accustomed to doing for yourself and merging your life with somebody else. And so that was hard for me. I mean, my husband was married before for like 15 years and he has shared his life with somebody. He knows what it is to have somebody else to care for and to think about and to have a life with. I don't know what that is like, or I didn't know what that was like. So learning the value of partnership, what that actually means. I mean, blending our finances, like it's a combination of so many things that is like, I've never had to ask anybody how to spend my money before. I've never had to account for how money is spent or where it goes or file taxes with somebody. Um,
Right.
and so, it's a lot. So outside of the kids, that alone was a big deal for me because I'm also used to getting up and going for work. I'm used to just jumping on a plane when I want to, doing whatever I want when I want to without having to think about anybody else.
Of course, right?
So that was a major adjustment for me, but understanding the value of partnership and what that means in terms of, your debt is my debt, my debt is your debt. We make decisions together that are in the best interest of the unit. And my husband likes to say, we above me.
I
um
love that. I
yeah.
love
And so shifting my mind to think about that, about life from that perspective, even like my spiritual walk was something that I took a
that.
long time
Yours.
to, like, yeah, it was mine because, uh, you know, it took a while for me to open up that space. And I didn't realize how guarded I was until he pointed it out to me. So even just learning to communicate in a way that he receives it is something that was hard for me because I'm very dry, very to the point, and he likes details. So
Yes, he does.
I, that was hard for me too, and it's still a work in progress. Like communication, I think is our greatest challenge from the perspective of understanding how each of us communicates and accepting that some things are just not going to change.
Definitely. I think it's so funny because it's so much about compromise, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so curious, like, what has been the biggest compromise for you, or what has been the biggest change for you? Has
Um,
it been giving up that thing that is yours?
Honestly, I think the biggest compromise. So, first of all, I think it's clear that we probably should mention that I moved, right? I moved my entire life from a different country to a new country and a new state that I'm not familiar with. And so the biggest compromise for me, I think, was professionally. As much as I still have my clients in Jamaica that I service and my clients in Florida that I service, it's still a sacrifice because I have to take 2 planes to get to wherever I need to be. The time differences are something that I have to juggle. And, some jobs I have to say no to because it
Right.
just doesn't fit into my new life.
This we, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
fit into the we.
And so I think that has been the biggest compromise. I mean, also not being able to see my family all the time, which again, it's just a matter of distance. It's not that I can't go to see them, but it's not practical,
And
anymore.
not only that, right? It's not just a decision that you make just for you, right? It's something that you kind of have to talk about. It's something
Right.
that you guys have to schedule and do together. So I think it's interesting because I got married in my 20s,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like in my 20s, I had a much less cohesive sense of who I was. And so it was easier to give up certain things, right? It was easier to kind of like move in with somebody. It was easier to make decisions together. It was much easier because I think we were younger and there was a lot less, right? We each
Yeah.
had a lot less that we could put together.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I don't know, the idea of being married again is something that it scares me a little, right? Because I have my own home. I already have children. I already don't, I already kind of like don't want you to stay in the night. I kind of
Yeah.
don't, if I don't feel like cooking, I don't want to do that. And so, I'm curious do you think it would have been different if you had been married earlier in your life, or do you think it would have been just the
So
same?
so also, you talked about cooking a while ago, right? So I lived by myself for 40 years almost, right? So especially all of my adult life, I was alone. And so cooking is not something that I did very often because it's not fun to cook for yourself, right?
At all.
So being a homemaker has also been a massive adjustment for me, right? Running a household, even though I did it for myself, now I have to do it with somebody else in mind and with the kids in mind and with our guests in mind. And, it's like, so, preparing meals, all of the cleaning the house, all of these things, it's like, I have to juggle all of those things with my
Yeah.
work, you know?
And be you and have your life that you've always had. Yes,
Yep.
definitely.
I've definitely also become more of a homebody, not because, again, because I have to, but I'm in a new place, right? And it's freezing cold most of the time. So I tend to just stay inside. And everybody that I interact with is in another country or another state.
Yes.
So also I haven't created a community here yet. It's literally just me and my husband, which is good in a way because we get to create new experiences together. I mean, this is also a new state for him. So we're kind of learning together and figuring it out together, which is great. When we talk about the kids, um, it's a work in progress, right? And so I'm used to being with people that have children,
Yes.
and I've always been accustomed to me having a better relationship with the mothers than even the fathers.
The actual
And
dads.
so
Right.
so this has been an adjustment for me because it hasn't been easy, you know. But it's a work in progress.
Definitely. Definitely. So I think that blending families, I mean, we can talk about the marriage, and the marriage, marriage is a system. Marriage is a system, it's an institution, and it comes with rules and it comes with laws and it comes with, and it's something that's negotiated kind of every day. Every day you guys have to renegotiate your marriage, right? Every day new things come up. And
And
and it's funny because
you
when you
wake
do
up
have a
feeling
very good, huh?
no, and I said today you could wake up on the wrong side of the bed and it creates a whole different, space for how you're gonna exist in today.
Definitely. And there, before you're married or when you're alone, you can have a bad day and it's your bad day, right? But now it totally impacts, right, this whole other person who again is still learning you and has their own style.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I remember when I got divorced, my ex-husband started dating somebody else, and the children came home. My children were little when that happened. And I remember wondering, like, oh my God, what does this whole other person know about my kids? You know what I mean? But it was really important, I think, that I made it comfortable for those kids to be around this person, because whether I like it or not, and the same could be for your situation. Whether you like it or not, people are going to fall in love and want to be together, and people have the right to be able to start over, right? But
I
there's all
always
these.
wonder, why wouldn't you want to know who is a part of your child's life? It doesn't make sense to me. Why wouldn't you want to know that this person is taking care of your children and they're capable of having a positive impact on your child's life? It doesn't make sense to me why you would have this aversion to getting to know your especially if it's that it's somebody that's lasting. I'm not saying to meet every girlfriend or to meet every boyfriend, but the people that are going to be in a lasting relationship, then why wouldn't you want to get to know that person? Because they essentially become a part of your family.
Definitely. And not only that, it has lasting and generational impacts when it doesn't go right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it does. I always say that it takes a village, and it really does take a village. And whether or not you feel a certain way about somebody, they are raising your child, and they
Yeah.
are a part of the legacy that your child lives on to go and be. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that we provide, well, the kids, right, and the system with as much comfort and with as much insulation as possible, and that comes with communication, compromise. That comes with understanding, how we're going to do this thing and coming up with rules. So this we above me thing, though, do you think that also kind of carries into the family, into the blended family? Is there that in the marriage with the kids, right? Does
Yeah.
we become over me even with the kids?
So the reality is that your children are part of who you are, right? And so that love that I have for my partner should be able to extend to the children because they are part of who he is. And I think that there is a time and a place, right? So the children should always be a priority. But then there has to be a balance with your spouse being a priority. And so it's a matter of managing time and also, like you said, communication, right? So if something comes up with one of the girls, if you communicate to me that this is the situation, then we both can decide together, this is what we need to get done, right? And sometimes I might not have a say, in terms of whether it's going to happen or not. Maybe it's just something that needs to happen, but this needs to happen and this is why, so that I can try to understand.
Of
You know,
course.
it's not a perfect world, and sometimes our worlds are going to collide, but understanding the importance of certain things matters. And again, your children are my children, regardless of the relationship that we have.
I love that. I
Regardless of
love
the
that you even
relationship
feel
I
like
have with
that.
your children. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Even if I have never exchanged a word with you, the reality is that I am going to still always have your best interest at heart because you are a part of my partner.
of course. Of course. I think that when it comes to blended families, people don't understand the impact of what that's going to be like. You meet somebody, in your case, you meet somebody, you fall in love, you decide I'm going to go and do this, right? And people we should be able to do that. We should fall in love and go be with our partner and start this life. But there is all this other stuff that comes with it, and I don't know that people understand how
Yeah.
important it is, that when we say blended families, that it be blended, right?
Yeah.
That it not just be a part of what's going to come over, because it really does impact the child in so many ways. I can't speak very much, at least from my experience. I want to say that I have a blended family, but I don't necessarily blend over there, right? My kids blend with that unit. I've not had a partner in the way, that we can say we've had blended families. I've dated guys with children and their kids and my kids, but it hasn't been living together under one roof, right? Parenting styles, conflict. Do you feel, as like a stepmother, girl, because you're like a stepmother now, do you feel like you have a say in how the children are raised? And I know that your situation is a little bit different because the girls are already older,
Yeah.
but do you feel like you've been given the place, or that you have a say in how things go? Have you been given that?
To an extent, right? Um, but like you said, the girls are almost adults. They're grown, and so um, they're old enough to be able to make their own choices.
So the
Um,
roles change, you think, when they're older? Like you go from being a step parent to like a friend? Would that be more ideal, do you think? Or
I don't know that it's a friend, but I think somebody that's more of a mentor than a parent, so I can give you advice and guidance, but you decide if you want to take it or not, you
of
know?
course, of course.
Yeah.
Do you feel and again, I'm asking you all these questions. This is funny. I feel like I'm interviewing you, but it's because it's so real, right?
Mhm.
I've not been there yet, but
Yeah.
I'm curious about the bonding, um how are we bonding? How do you guys bond? Like how does that happen?
So, I mean, the dynamic is different with all of them, right? Because they're all individuals. Our eldest she's just, I mean, you know her, she's an amazing human, but her mother is also an amazing human, and I have found that
I
the
love that.
more the more that the parent is willing to facilitate a transition, is the easier the transition is.
Of
It becomes
course, and
harder for the
safely.
child and for the unit, for the family, if the parents are not on board with trying to make this the best situation for the children. And so it makes it a little more difficult, but I think we've all found our things that we enjoy to do together. And so we kind of focus on that. We'll have our check-ins and our calls, our own, just how things are going. But of course, I'm closer to some than others, you
Of
know.
course, of course. Sometimes I don't know, and I've been counseling clients and I've been counseling families for years when it comes to this, but very rarely is it about the children at all, you
Yeah.
know, and that's the truth. At least in my situation, I would love to have a much more strong, unit when it comes to my children and their father and his relationship. There's no children over there, right? But there's certainly a stepmother, and you know what? If it ever came to where like my ex-husband had a child with that person, my children now have a sibling. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
again, we like to think of blended families, but we never even really know what that looks like. And we never know, we don't know what kind of form that takes. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's why I always feel like it's just so important. People are not always going to be on the same page. People are not always going to be on the same page. But it's really important, man, that at the end of the day, right, that these kids be like the main thing
And that's
because
it.
we're adults. Everybody else is adults. We've already been raised. We've
Yeah.
already been raised.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of maturity. It takes a lot of maturity in putting things to the side.
Yeah, and
Mm,
healing, I think that some of us so often we carry this baggage because we don't take the time to heal, and that baggage rolls over to our children. And
definitely.
so it's unfortunate when we're not able to acknowledge that we are a big part of the problem.
And we are. I think that, I mean, it's funny. I always say when people come to me with their kids, I'm like, well, are you going to do counseling too? Because don't think that it's only the child,
Yeah.
right? The child, it's funny in therapy, there's this whole idea that there's going to be one child in the family or one person in the family that is going to absorb the symptoms for that family's dysfunction, right? So everybody might be kind of going about their day being normal, but there's going to be one child or one person who is not going about their day being normal and who's able to kind of like take on all of that pressure and take on for the rest of the family. And when that person is presented to me, I understand that that's the problematic or the symptomatic child, but that what the issue here is this system, right? That the
Mhm.
system is broken, or that the system is corroded, or that the system needs some upkeep. But man, it's really hard for parents and for people to take accountability, to understand that not only are they part of the problem, they're creating a lot of it. You know what I mean? um it's such an interesting conversation about blended families. I feel like so much a part of me not having a serious relationship has been because it's been a fear of mine. You know, who is this person that I'm going to be with? How are they going to be with my family? How are they going to be with my children? What is discipline going to look like? I'm raising two young boys.
Yeah.
Mine are not big yet.
But I
Um,
think a lot of that has to, we talked about pre-marriage before, right? And the preparation for that. And I think a lot of the time we feel like, you know, we have these hot relationships and we fall in love and we're like, oh yes, you're the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, but we don't have the real conversations before we get married to understand all of those things. And I think that premarital counseling with actual therapists, not just 3 sessions with a priest, let's be real,
Right.
to have the real conversations around what does our life look like? If we have a blended family, what does raising our children look like? What do you actually have a say in? What does our money management look like? Because our money management also has to deal with taking care of our kids, right?
Definitely.
Whether our kids talk to us or not, right? And so, you know, it's all of those elements that we need to think about. What does disciplining our child look like? Does your partner have a say in that? You know, there's like so many things that we have to consider when we are building a partnership with somebody. If it's a true partnership, then there's a lot of things that need to be discussed, because the reality is that all of the things that happen within our lives as individuals rolls over into our lives as a unit.
Definitely. Definitely. And the kids learn, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids learn.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what happens with blended families is that, again, right, you fall in love with somebody, you want to build this life together, and now there's this whole other situation that needs to be addressed and that needs to be incorporated into that. And then there's this whole other expectation, right? There's this whole other, it's so funny because I always say that there's all these stakeholders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually an ex-husband or an ex-wife has other multiple people that they have to be accountable to,
Yeah.
you know? And it's really
And things
tough
like
because
caring for our
everybody has, huh?
how do we care for each other's parents? How do we interact with each other's siblings? If one of our siblings calls and says, I need help with something, how do we deal with that situation? You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that have to factor into our life as a partnership.
And it's more and more prevalent, right? I think that as divorce heightens, and as remarriage heightens, these are more and more issues that people are going to need to definitely be much more aware of. And I couldn't agree with you more about the pre-marriage. You know, I think if more people did premarital counseling, there would be a lot less divorces, right? And there would be a lot less more blended families because we're not doing this again and again.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, it's funny because even in premarital counseling, again, that kind of happens at the beginning of the relationship, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody is super clear with with what that relationship is going to look like as years go by, or once you incorporate kids, or once you have them be a part of it. You know, I know for you, it took a little while, right? There's a lot of people who, from the very beginning, they're dealing with these kids, they're dealing with these issues, they're dealing with some of the problems. Um, and man, I can't stress enough how important it is that these conversations be had way before you get married, way before you start, because
Yeah.
once it starts, it's
And I think it's important to understand that premarital counseling is to prepare you for the hard things, right? It is to have the discussions around the topics that we don't think about. Is to have the discussions in a safe space where if differences in opinions come up, there's a way to communicate. I mean, for us, our premarital counseling was heavily focused on communication, because that's where we have the greatest challenge. And again, it's not communication with us talking at each other, but it's understanding how we help each other to understand our point of view, you know? Um, and it's work. It is work. People, a lot of us go into marriage with these ideas of, oh, it's all about how we feel. And it's not,
no,
because it's a decision to actively love somebody. It's a decision to create a partnership. It's a decision to build and to grow a life together. Yes, you can plan what the future holds, right? I mean, things are going to happen, but how we manage the hard things is what's going to determine if we stay together or not, and how our marriage is going to function day to day.
definitely, definitely. I know that many times when I've done counseling with clients, people don't know what the hard things are. People don't even know what the hard things are,
Yeah.
you know? And so it really is important that, you know, I think when you kind of go into the relationship, if this is somebody that you're going to really be serious with, to start looking at those things, right? I know you've spoken in the past about, you know, what does caring for our parents look like, right? What does a new relationship with our parents look like? What does the relationship with an ex-spouse look like? What does a relationship look like, right? With our money, with the how we're going to do chores and how we're going to do housework.
Yep.
Who's going to take care of what, you know? And I
Yep.
think it's funny because we're talking about doing this now in our lives at this point. And I think it is different doing it later on in life. It's completely different. I think we have a lot more of ourselves that we want to hold on to,
Yep.
right? That can kind of sometimes be overshadowed by this unit, you know, and you do lose a part of something, you know, something is definitely sacrificed, something is definitely lost. But I also think that there's so much to gain, you
Yeah.
know, when it's done right, when these relationships are rich and fruitful.
Yeah.
I love your stepdaughter. Like I just love your stepdaughter, right? And you can tell that she's coming from a place where there is a lot of um you know, that her mom is a part of what you guys are doing, that there is good relationship building, that there is some communication, a lot of communication. And you can tell in the child, you can always tell in the child, you know, where
Yep.
they're coming from. So again, you know, I don't know, having the hard conversations are hard, but
Yep.
going through a divorce, having children be in dysfunctional situations, having people suffer is way worse, I think, than any tough conversation, you know. I would love to know how other people, I know that it's such an easy thing to talk about at this age because I know so many people who are remarried. You know, it's
Yep.
such a huge topic at our age because we've already been married, we've already had kids, we're doing this again, maybe for two or three times. Um, and I'd love to know how other people are doing it because it is tough. It is tough, but I think it's also beautiful. What's been the most beautiful part of it for you?
I think just the newness in terms of new experiences for me. There's so many new experiences for me because I've had to do it all by myself, you know. So having a partner and learning the definition of a true partnership is something that is it's freeing. You know, in the beginning it felt like bondage. But it's really freeing when you realize that you actually have somebody that you can count on, when you realize that there is somebody that actually cares about your well-being, that actually cares about what you want, what that you know that's actually interested in what's going on in your life.
Of course,
It's
it's
and
so
not just
special.
my life but my family, the people that are important to me, the people that matter to me. You know, it's refreshing and freeing.
It definitely is. And I think it's super needed. You know, we can't go through this life alone. We
Yeah.
definitely can't. And I think that, you know, you've been so blessed because you do have a partner who, from the gate, wanted to just have everybody be together, who wanted to be immersed in your family, who wanted you immersed in his. You know, I know that not everybody has those kind of experiences, you know.
Yeah.
So again, guys, I think it's really important. I think it's really important that you guys have the tough conversations and that you give your partner grace. Listen, a lot of people are trying to make multiple people happy. You know, I know that we've had this conversation. I want to make my children happy, my boyfriend happy, my job happy. I want to make this happy and this happy. But everybody might have different agendas. And so it takes from the person who is simultaneously trying to do this thing and make your brand new, beautiful partner happy and a home well, you know, well run and well managed.
Yeah.
So it is really interesting, and it really is important that you do give your partner some grace and that you do understand that it's not easy. You know, it's not easy. You know, you didn't go into this relationship with children. How do you think it would have been different if you had had kids?
I do have one. And she's great. I mean, he's been great with her, you know, like there's nothing that she could ever ask for that he doesn't say yes to.
That's beautiful.
And again, I mean, she's 22 and just graduated from school. She started working, but it's still a transition for her. And so,
Yes.
um, you know, his ability to just love her and accept her has been great, you know.
His ability to love and accept everybody because he is.
Yeah.
We love him. We love you, hubby. Oh my
So
goodness,
guys,
guys.
we want you to share with us, you know, what your thoughts are on blended families and what are some of the challenges that you've had and what are some of the wins that you've had, some of the things that you thought are great about just marriage and partnership, you know.
I'm gonna do it again, you guys. I am gonna do it again. I am gonna do the tough questions. I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna do it all different, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just go based on, oh my God, I love this person so much. Let's get married and let's be together. No, 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 no. It's different now. It's different now.
Yeah.
It's different now. And I'm a much better human being now, you know, and a much more understanding human being now. And I also understand that it's not easy, you know, but that it's worth it. So I think I'm excited. I'm excited for you, my love. I'm really excited about what your family and your future looks like. And for the audience, guys, let us know what blended families look like for you. What have been some of the challenges? What have been some of the awesome parts of it? What have you learned about yourself in the process, right? Because I'm sure that it pulls parts of you that you didn't know existed, you know? I'm sure you have to be quiet when you didn't think you could be quiet, or be vocal when you would prefer to not speak up, right? There are all of these ways that it also helps us to grow ourselves. So we want to know, we want to know, we want to hear about it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we will see you next week as we close out our season of Focused at 40. Bye.